How you doing?
Good. How are
It's
you?
like that good, guys. Huh?
Good.
That's awesome.
Find my unmute button.
I just had to make a video and took me like nearly 2 hours for a topic I had no idea on how to do. So it was a lot of colorful vocabulary, which I probably shouldn't say on live YouTube. We're gonna have to edit this.
Yep, you just got that recorded.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
I was like,
All right, here we are, right on the 6th bell. And for those of you that'll be joining us later on in the recordings, my name is TJ Zebel. I am a certified clinical hypnotist and corporate coach. I also work with professional athletes for performance enhancement. And that's the first 2 pages of my Rolodex. We'll just leave it at that. Thank you for joining us on Triple T number 10 on March 8th, 2022. And had a few people contact me that they were going to be running a little late, and a few that won't be able to join us tonight. So they send their regards through the recording capabilities. But here we are. Any feedback, ahas, epiphanies from the last one? I can see one of the cats is super excited to be here. We appeal to all animals. Glad to hear it.
I just had feedback about the one that I ended up being late for one of them, but the 3 magic questions was fantastic. Super, super helpful in the functionality of it, because I tend to think of it in a very structured way, and I like how functional you made it and how easy it flowed.
Cool.
Which week was that?
Week 4.
Okay.
I was hanging out.
I'm trying to go back and listen to the videos. So
yeah, definitely no. It's week 4 in January. But yeah, it was excellent, because the way that I don't like how it sometimes comes across like the seduction component, because I feel like it's very, like, I know other people have mentioned it doesn't feel as natural, and I don't like that. I like when it feels more natural, more functional, more ways that I can actually turn around and be like, oh, I am already doing that. Okay, so that's, and making that connections of seeing what I am doing and what I'm not doing and how I can strengthen it.
Wow, now I'm going to have to go back and watch the recording. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Sure thing. Thank you for sharing that.
And for those of you watching the recording, please leave comments down, because that helps me with knowing where to take some of these things. And I have a feeling we have, take a look here. Is that Elijah? It sure is. Let him get his audio connected. It's connecting a long way, all the way from the UK. Nancy, any feedback, any ahas, epiphanies that stood out for you?
no, I'm not prepared to answer that yet. I'm still watching the videos.
So nothing impressive, just we're watching movie. We're catching.
Oh, it's all good, but
Okay. I'm just giving you a hard time. How you doing, Elijah?
Morning.
Good morning.
At 2 a.m.
No, it's midnight. It's midnight. It's 2 a.m. when we finish.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sticking up. I appreciate it.
Listen,
every
even if
time.
it was 2 a.m. when we started, I'd still be here.
You're an
You can
awesome.
ask Bernie. Do you remember Bernie? You know Bernie, right?
Oh, yes, quite well.
Yeah, he did when the first ever sort of coronavirus lockdowns and stuff started happening and people started staying at home. He did like a meditation every week for like a few weeks, and it was like 6:30 or 7. I don't remember what time, California time. It was like 2:30 a.m. for me, and I never missed one. I was there at every single one.
Right? Ah. Well, I was just doing a quick little round table to see what any ahas, epiphanies, or standouts from the last week or two were, and wondering if you had anything that stood out for you.
I have had actually an epiphany, but it was not to do with what we discussed here on the video. So I don't know if that counts.
Well, go ahead. Share an epiphany. I like epiphanies, no matter
I
where
just really liked quantifiers. I started getting more into quantifiers with language, and it's really cool how well you can expand or reduce the scope of someone's attention depending on whether you want them to focus on the thing or not. So if you're talking about the problem, you can kind of get someone to really zero in on the problem so you can understand it better, and then have them kind of expand out. So the example I give you is like universal quantifiers. So words like every, any, all, always, never, all those kind of things, right? Then you have existential quantifiers, which are words like a few, some, many, most, right? Those kind of words. And then you have unique specifiers, which are words like only, just, especially, specifically, right? And so if you start on one of those three levels, if you assume like the universal ones with always and every is like the top level, and only and just is the bottom level, then depending on where you start and where you move up, whether you move up a level or down a level, you can cause someone to either expand their awareness or reduce it down. So if I say, sometimes you might be experiencing some difficulties with this problem and you might not feel so great. Could you tell me about only just one of those times when it happened? And what you do is you end up getting someone into a specific context rather than having them talk about it. Because like when clients come to you, it's all generalized. You say like, oh, what can I help you with? Or what do you want to work through? And they say, oh, my life's a mess. Now I can't really work with that because
right?
it's too general. Do you know what I mean? So
Yep.
I say, okay, so if your life's a mess, tell me about just one. That's how I'm using my quantifiers. Just one thing that you would like to work through. Oh, I want to work on my relationship. Okay, so what is it that you want to work through on your relationship? Oh, well, he's always never paying attention to me and he's always this. And okay. Slow down. I can see you have some different things you want to work through there, but how about telling me about just one of them? And you might find that as we solve that one specific issue,
Then we go silent.
That or he's just baiting us.
my microphone just
Yeah, something quit. But I was going to add on to that. NLP is heavy into that as well, which works well when you have people that use those type of quantifiers where this always happens to me. And so you get the advantage of going always. So was there ever a time where that didn't happen to you?
even just once,
Just once.
right?
Yeah.
So it's like it gives you an opportunity when you're listening to people use these words. It gives you the opportunity to give a counterexample, right? Oh, I always bite my nails. Really? Always? Was there ever a time when you weren't biting them? Because I don't see you biting them right now. right? That
Yep.
kind of thing. Yeah. So anyway, I had an epiphany with quantifiers. I've been playing a lot with the different quantifier words and coming up with some really funky, mind-bending, twisting questions that send you to the void for a second as soon as I ask it. And it's really good to do like awesome little trances with spacey questions like that. So that's what I've been playing with.
Now take that and add it on to the concept of nothing means anything until you give it a label. And when you start taking away their quantifiers and making them relabel their labels and what they think they have, it's an amazing way to basically disassemble the foundation that they build all of their arguments and issues upon.
That's right. But the thing you can really it's kind of cool, right? If somebody is one of those people that always, I just did it, always says the word always, right? If somebody uses that word often, like, oh, it's always going wrong for me, or I'm always having bad luck, or it never goes my way, and they use these kind of universal words like always, never, all the time, that kind of thing, every time. The cool thing is it means their brain generalizes really easily. So once you've got the solution and you've got the shift in the emotions and they start to feel good, they will generalize the good feeling just as well as they've been generalizing the problem. And so that change is going to stick for a long time. And that's really cool. So you can kind of turn the thing that's kind of holding them back into the thing that will help them keep the change for longer, which is awesome.
Exactly. And Lenora, you had a hand up?
When you're asking that question, so is there ever a time, or tell me just one thing, are you having them very specifically do a transderivational search, like from the NLP component? Are you asking them to go in and come up with an example? Or am I completely off?
So the way I would say is, imagine a transderivational search. It's like you're searching everything, right? So imagine that's like just searching Google, right? But then if I start using quantifiers, I can get them to search just the part that I want them to search. So instead of saying, oh, search the whole of Google, I might say, oh, just search the CNN news channel website only, or just search Facebook only, right? So I might ask a question like, I know you've had this problem a while and you think it happens all the time, but could you tell me about just one time when you weren't feeling that was a little bit better? So by saying the word weren't, which is essentially a were not, when you use the word not, you kind of negate that option. So I'm telling them like, oh, don't tell me about all the problems. Tell me about it just when it happens in this scenario. So in a way, you're limiting the transderivational search and getting them to focus their attention on the part which has the information which you need to help them to find the solution to their own problem.
So would you consider that just a very specific one, like a very specific search that you're asking them?
Well, so it depends on which quantifiers you use, right? So if you say just or only or specifically, then yes, it's very specific.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you're trying to isolate somebody's problem, you do want to get specific, not necessarily specific in the details of the problem, but more in the context. So like, when and where does it happen? You know?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are watching the recording or tuning in, whatever, and you have no idea what transderivational search is all about, and you're just like, what? You noticed how we referenced a Google search. It's basically your subconscious and your conscious doing a Google search of everything that you know to try and do matches and see what applies, including programs that have been put on your hard drive anywhere from conception on up to 5 or possibly 7, when the vast majority of our main programs were put on. Obviously, as we grow, we continue to add programs onto our hard drive, but ages 0 to 5, possibly 7, are the ones where our main programming is set in place. Kind of like, are we going to be an Apple? Or are we going to be a PC? Are we, all of that stuff. And a good majority of the situations that we deal with to help people started way back then. As a segue into properties of the subconscious, when we work with people on their issues, we're typically working with their subconscious. And things to remember about the subconscious are the subconscious always answers first. It always tells the truth. It almost always sounds like a whim or a whisper. It's very quiet. And because of that, we almost always have an urge to edit. And lastly, it's almost never linear. And the very first time I heard that, I was like, what? And what that means is, if I ask you to go back to the very first time or event that caused this issue, your subconscious will whisper the answer. Then your conscious will go, no, that's wrong. I know the answer. And it's screaming in the background. And it's like, it was when we were 12 and that girl next door said we were a blah, 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 blah. And when we can finally get your conscious to shut up, and we ask again, and your subconscious answers again, it turns out you were 1.5 years old, you're standing outside, you can't find your teddy bear, and mom and dad were having a fight. And you're like, what the heck's, what's that got to do with it? Well, that was the very first domino of energy that got put in place. And you probably didn't even remember it, obviously. But every little domino of energy that got put in place after that was silently stacking up until you're 12 and all of a sudden this girl calls you a blah, blah, blah. All the dominoes fall, all the energy, boom, all at once. And you have a major marker in your brain. Oh, that's what it was. And the problem is you didn't clean up the dominoes. You just felt all the energy. Well, then they reset and keep building. And then later on in life, another thing happens. Knocks all the dominoes down, all the energy explodes. Oh my God, well, yeah, then when I was 25 and another girl told me blah, 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 and it triggered something, that thing from 12. And until we can go back to 1.5 years and take all the energy out of that first one so that everything beyond it no longer has the power, that's when everything goes away. It's kind of like the easiest definition of PTSD, which is another label. If you look at the progression of the labels that led up to PTSD, there was, war fatigue, and then it was shell shock. I don't remember the next one. And then they finally decided, well, those were too easy to treat. Now we need to bring it up to post-traumatic stress disorder. And this is why I like having people on, because Elijah's saying, I disagree. Finding the root is not necessary. Any entry point will do, because the unconscious is also nonlinear.
There's no such thing as root cause, TJ. The latest neuroscience shows that the arborescent tree metaphor of having a root and branches doesn't really apply. The brain and the unconscious mind is much more like a rhizome, like mint or ginger, where it grows outwards and laterally, and it doesn't matter if you cut any one section, it will still continue to grow.
Really?
Not
Awesome.
like it's not like if you cut the taproot of a tree, it will die, right? But if you cut a rhizome, it will still grow, and even if it comes across a different species, it can create hybrid and continue. So it's much more useful to start thinking of it more like a rhizome than an arborescent tree. And as
for
such,
people
there's
that-
no such
that
thing
are
as
wa- Hold on. For people that are watching this that don't know what a rhizome means, could you describe what that?
okay. A rhizome is a plant that grows horizontally rather than vertically. So things like mint, like ginger, and things like that grow kind of outwards in every direction,
Okay.
right? And that's what a rhizome is, versus a tree or a traditional plant, which is the non-rhizome plants, which have the root, which starts from the seed and then goes outwards, but mostly downwards, and then shoots up in its growth above the soil, right? So a rhizome goes laterally and the tree goes upwards. And what they're saying is to the brain and the mind, especially, not just the physical organ of the brain, operates much more like a rhizome than it does with the old metaphor that people used to use with trees, because any part can link to any other part. You don't need to go linearly, like you were saying earlier. It's non-linear, right?
Right.
And so it doesn't. And so if that's the case, that any part can link to any other part, then you don't ever really need to find the root cause or the very first one. As long as you find one instance, which is what I was saying earlier to Lenora, that if you find one specific context, when and where did it happen, and you deal with that one incident, whether it was the first one or not, when you then do all your future pacing and you're spreading it out and you're doing your learning part where you're installing the resource, it will eventually get to the first one anyway. So it doesn't matter. You don't have to do it you don't have to necessarily find the first one. As long as you have an entry point into the system and you solve that one and then generalize out, it will get all of them.
Well, that gives a whole new twist on to regression therapy, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to do the first time. You can do the one I started doing with regression. When you start talking about, oh, you're going to go back to the very first scene, situation, or event. I don't say that anymore. You're going to go back to the scene, situation, or event where you felt this most strongly. So wherever the unconscious mind is going to take them, but it will be the strongest instance that they can remember of having that feeling. And it might not be the first one, but it might have been one that's stuck in their mind. And that way you can get even more data because they remember it more.
Lenora's got a question.
Kind of like a mix of things. It almost makes me think of when with timeline injection, how it can go forwards and backwards. But then when Elijah just said where you first felt it the most strongly. So in HMR, they say all the parts of you that ever felt like this. And he actually will even say, Brent will even say, however many there are, whether it's 100 or 1,000, get all your parts in the same area, and then go through the process, go through the lesson, go through the color. And that way, almost he's kind of saying it spreads across rather than going down. It spreads across, at least when I've been walked through it. It is going through all of them, kind of like a starburst or an energy shock would be. That's
awesome. Yeah. So I said you need just one entry point, and she's describing having multiple simultaneous entry points all at once, which is just even more bang for the buck. It works. Yeah.
Cool.
My point was you didn't need to have the very first one. Yeah.
And this is exactly why I wanted Triple T to not be a talking head situation, because I wanted to make sure that we had the ability to gather information from a number of people, because I I don't consider myself to be the expert at anything. I just know a lot of different stuff. So thank you, Elijah. That was gold right there, right in a recording, and we have it here. Anybody else got any input or questions or anything on that? Bueller? Okay. On to the next topic. This should be fun. This one came to me, pull up my quotes here, about procrastination. And there are so many different views on procrastination and ways to get around it or through it or destroy it, and the procrastination buster and everything. And so I've got a couple of different, a different look at it. And the question becomes, are you procrastinating or are you planning your attack, or are you using your planning to procrastinate? Some people who are still recovering perfectionists will often use, well, I don't quite know enough yet, or I haven't quite got all the details out yet, or I'm pretty sure there's at least 20 steps to it, and I can only figure out 7 of them so far. And so I'm not going to get started until I at least know step 21 of the 20 before I get started. And in the end, it takes them forever to get started if they even do. And I'm guilty. I had a plumbing project right here at the house that I put off for quite a while, and decided, you know what, we got homeowners the new buyer's insurance, and for $75 I can get a professional to come out and fix this one little valve for our washing machine. And we put it off, procrastinating, and because of this and that, and finally we got the guy out, and long story short, he MacGyvered it so poorly, and in the process busted a 3-foot by 4-foot hole in the ceiling of my garage. And in the end, I had to redo his work to the way I was going to do it anyway, and do the rest of the job that I wanted him to do that he didn't want to do, and then fix the hole in the ceiling. And then finally redid the water heater system, knowing that after that I could do it. It took me a little longer because it took me a little longer to plan it out. And a couple of times the question came, am I putting it off with over planning, or am I planning it to make sure that I do it once? And that's where this question came up. And yeah, Elijah, the problem with that is after step 1 or 2, some new information comes to light, and then the plan needs adapting. And yeah, that's where prioritization and understanding of, again, what's your outcome, where do you want to be, what's that look like, and is it ever evolving? So in looking at that, sometimes we have to assess, why is it taking extra time? You know, what's our holdup? What are we using as are we using excuses? Are we are we fully set up and ready to pull the trigger, but we're afraid of the outcome or the change or what it could do or what it could not do? Or are we afraid of worst case scenario? And I'm trying to remember, I think it was Mark Twain, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but who said, I invested a lot of energy worrying about 100 things that could happen, 99 of which never did. And how
EJ,
much, yeah,
I got a comment on that though. And I
Okay.
agree with what you said as far as, you thought about it and then you just decided to hire somebody else and then you ended up, it's all the work. But a lot of times what I find with some procrastinators is they're sitting there waiting for somebody else to do the work.
Yep.
And not like you were waiting for, you had to hire somebody or whatever to do the work. But a lot of times, like say in a relationship, a marriage, this, that, and the other, one or the other will procrastinate, hoping that the other one will do it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because sometimes we're afraid that the only one that there'll be to blame if it doesn't work out is me. So if I can get somebody else involved and it doesn't work, I can either share the blame or push the blame towards them, which I guess I could easily say that was the deal with the plumbing thing. I didn't want to mess with it for $75. And if it didn't work out, I could go, blah, 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 which it turned out horribly. So I did a lot of blah, 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 and ended up redoing it myself. But as you said, in relationships, I've watched a number of, I've had a number of clients where they were in relationships and they're trying to, well, I just don't understand. And when I put them through the protocol of, if you had the chance to do it all over again, if you met them and you knew everything about them and they knew nothing about you, would you approach them and date them again? And watching their reaction, and I've had more than a few that were like, no. I'm like, then why are you still with them? Well, the kids, the money, I'm like, okay. Eventually, it's going to come to a head. So you can put it off, and you can rip that Band-Aid off as slow as you want. And you have to decide, why is it you're pulling the Band-Aid off so slow? Do you think they're going to change? They're never going to change. Oh, okay. Do you think you're going to change to where you're like, you know what, actually this works? No. Okay. And well, as you're waiting for someone else to do it, sounds like an attempt to dodge responsibility. Correct. But that only causes someone to give up their power. Also correct. Yes. And so that's why that question, just kind of stuck in my head, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Are you procrastinating? Are you planning? Or are you using your planning to procrastinate? I'll let you guys chew on that for a while. The other part that another thing that came up over the week has to deal with changing life and identity. And it was a quote from something I heard where it said, in changing your life and identity, do not forget to stay present to today and who you are and who you get to continue to be once you've passed your goal. A lot of people, and this is just a theory, in trying to change who they are, or in doing things like losing weight, they'll have this goal that I've got to lose X amount of weight by this date, and their mind is so set on that's what we're going to do, and they do everything that it takes to get there. And if you ask them how the trip was, what else did you do, and did you have fun along the way, and they were so focused on that one goal that they forgot to be themselves along the way, and all of a sudden, bam, they hit the weight that they want. And a lot of them regress because they didn't plan their life beyond the goal. How are you going to keep a life and design a life that you'll want to live in while you're getting to that goal and after you get to that goal? It's even the same with I've seen it in corporate. They are so focused that they have to be CFO or COO or CEO, and they put their life on hold and they just power drive. They forget about who they wanted to be and who they were before that goal hit them, and their family and friends don't see them anymore. Their office sees them a lot. Actually, their office computer sees them a lot. And then all of a sudden they hit that goal and they're like, okay, I'm here. Now what? And let's see. Elijah said, I agree. One must first see things how they are without lying to themselves before they can begin to change things, or at least successfully change things. I agree with that too. Goals should be seen as waypoints rather than endpoints. Otherwise, one can snap back to hit a low. It's more about a trajectory than a goal. Correct. And that's why I tell people, change your lifestyle into something that is livable, that you can enjoy, because you need to enjoy the trip so that once you get to the destination, you still have something to continue enjoying. Does that make sense? Any input from you guys as well? Ahas, epiphanies?
Yeah, I wanted to chime in because I think this is something that comes up quite a bit for, I think, people at large. And if you're not enjoying the process of your everyday life, I mean, because the ultimate state of your being able to manifest and to bring forth the thing that you're calling in, that you're trying to attract into your experience, that you're actually trying to create, you have to be in a state of joy. You need to be in a state where you actually feel good. If you're not feeling good, you're going to attract more things that are going to be in a vibrational resonance that don't feel good. So if you can get yourself to a point where you can actually genuinely be either neutral or enjoying what it is that you do on a day-to-day basis, then find the good in where you're at so that you can then move forward and then pull in and experience what it is that you really, really do want.
Exactly. One amazing little story I heard about a gentleman who wanted to get in shape and wanted to lose weight because he was excessively out of condition, about 300 pounds. And so what he did was he started going to the gym for 5 minutes at a time.
Perfect.
Yeah, and people are like, what the hell's that accomplish? You show up for 5, you're not going to lose any. He goes, it wasn't about losing weight at first. I didn't want to hate the gym. I showed up, talked to a couple of people, made a couple of friends, walked around and one day I was just like, what's that machine do? And the guy that I was getting to know, he was like, oh, that works for that and that. Next time he showed up for his 5 minutes, he's like, what's that machine do? And pretty soon he wanted to stay for 10 minutes. And then pretty soon he wanted to stay for a half an hour. And he tried this machine and he tried that machine and he tried it. He didn't say, I've got to get on this machine and I got to do 1,200 reps and I've got to. And pretty soon he was going to the gym because he liked to be there. He liked the people that were there. He found what machines he liked. And then he learned more about what fit for what his one goal was. And he was smart enough to go, this is my first goal. This is my second goal. Well, how many goals are you going to have till I'm done? And then when I get there, I'll find another goal. And he dropped like when I heard this, he was at like 170 pounds. So he dropped 130 pounds.
Wow.
He lost a person.
More than that.
And said that a couple of times he walked over and they had 65-pound dumbbells there, and he would pick them up and walk around the gym, just not thinking he was like, the big bodybuilder, but he goes, I carried these all day, every day for a number of years. And sometimes I just come in here and I pick them up and I walk around with them to go, never again. I want to be able to pick them up and I want to be able to set them down and walk away. That hit me.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, I think part of even going back to the procrastination, I think sometimes people make the goal so big that getting started is scary. Like, oh my God, you see the whale and you're like, how in the world am I going to tackle that? And they forget about the idea of how do you eat a whale? One bite at a time. But when you're standing next to it and it's the size of 2 houses,
Yeah.
And so find a way to make the very first part of it enjoyable so that you can get into the habit. Elijah, talk to me, brother.
Okay, so sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. I wanted to say 2 different things at once.
Squirrels running all over the place.
In it, that's exactly right. So this whole idea of getting started, right, and the task seems so big, and so it's hard for me to just focus on the micro and the steps rather than seeing the macro and just being overwhelmed. A great question, and it's something I learned from one of my teachers. A great question you can ask someone is, well, once you've already achieved this, or once this problem's no longer a thing for you, and let's say you reach a point in your life where you'd even forgotten about it, like it hadn't been a problem for so long and you solved it so long ago that you'd even forgotten about it, how would you be as a person then? So what you're doing is you're kind of projecting them into the future and asking them, well, once you've solved it, what's the identity you have then? And then you elicit that state more and more. They'll say, oh, I'll be so happy, or I'll be so joyful, or I'll feel so proud of myself, or whatever it is they say. And you really start to pump that up within them and get them to feel that state. But the thing is, they're not feeling that state in the future. They're feeling it now. So this comes back to what Dane was saying, that you're actually raising their vibration in the now, and they're coming to that higher level so that they will be on the same level as the goal that they want to achieve or the problem they want to overcome, and what will follow that, or the feeling that will follow that. Because a lot of times when you drill down, people say they want things, but really what they want is the feeling that they'll get once they have the thing. So if they could have the feeling now, do they still need the thing? Like, let's say somebody says, oh, I want to get a new sports car and I'm going to feel really cool. I'm going to feel really awesome. And I'm going to feel, I'm having my little midlife crisis, but I think that's going to make me feel better. Right. If you really drill down to it and ask them, well, what's important about that? You start doing your criterion values and all that stuff. Right. You get to a point where a lot of times, and not always, sometimes there is a tangible thing that they want and it's valid. Right. But many times they don't necessarily want the thing. They just want the feeling that having the thing is going to give them. And so you can kind of tease that out by asking them, well, how will you be as a person, in terms, it's an identity question, once you already have that? And once they start getting into that state, and they have that state and they're feeling kind of the joy and the pride and whatever of having accomplished this thing, then you ask them, okay, so what's the smallest step that you could take now to make that a reality? And suddenly they're on this higher vibration, they're feeling good. And the first step should, in most cases, feel very simple to most people.
5 minutes at the gym.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Or it might even be smaller. It might be just put my shoes next to my bed when I sleep, so I know to put them on first thing in the morning and go for a walk or something. It could be even smaller, right? But the point is, what's the smallest step? But you've got them in the positive state of how they will be once they've achieved it. And then you ask them to begin after they're in the good state. And that has a lot more momentum going for it than what we had before, when people were kind of looking at this giant task and it's kind of overwhelming. So that's what I wanted to say about that.
And that allowed me to catch a squirrel quick. I don't know if I addressed this before, but what are you doing for your future self that your future self will be able to thank you for right now, even though it hasn't happened yet? And it can be as simple as setting out your clothes the night before, setting up your coffee and everything the night before. And when you identify and allow yourself to do these types of things, waking up in the morning and then consciously thanking your past self for doing these things for you. And people are like, oh, you're doing it for yourself. But you are setting up, projecting things into the future that benefit you. Same as working out, same as investing and saving money, same as, all the above. You're not doing this today for your today self per se. You're doing this today for your future self. And very few people can wrap their heads around that type of process. But again, if well, I already set my coffee out, but did you do it with the intention as a favor for your future self? Well, I always set my clothes out. And are you doing it with the intention as a favor for your future self? And when you wake up in the morning, are you thanking your past self for the favors done for you that you're enjoying right now? And Elijah commented, absolutely, stack the deck and make it easier for yourself, because with that intention, you generate more gratitude. And we are getting the concept of gratitude has been around for centuries, if not since the dawn of whatever. But I think that in our current busyness, it's getting, the popularity is coming back. But I know that when I was in my teens and 20s, got to have an attitude of gratitude. You would look at those people like, oh, you're one of those. Let me guess. I'm okay, you're okay. What kind of books you got? And we made fun of them. And I don't know if it's just because I've been blessed to get into this myself, but I hear it more and more and more, and I'm seeing a lot more stuff in stores and things of that nature than I ever remember at all when I was younger. So I think it's catching on. And there's a lot to be said for gratitude. So I think that took care of that squirrel.
Yeah,
ahead.
if I could mention something, because not too many years ago, I want to say back in like 2000, it was before 2012, 12 or 13. I'll never forget. I had a friend of mine. He's an attorney, and he was, in his, I don't know how old he was. Maybe he's in his 40s or somewhat like that. And the bottom line is, like, normally I would see him several times a year, him and his wife, along with my husband and, several other friends. And so the last time I had seen him was at Christmas time. And then the next time, for whatever reason, we normally saw each other, all the families, like around Cinco de Mayo in May, but we didn't see him at that time. And then in July, he hosted a 4th of July party. And so at the 4th of July party, all of a sudden, there was this transformation of what he looked like over Christmas, and now what he looked like, 6 months later in July, almost 7 months later. And I'll never forget, like the guy started to play basketball, in his backyard because they have a basketball court, and all of a sudden, I mentioned to his wife, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how did Scott all of a sudden have like a washboard ab stomach? Where did that come from? And she said, well, he just decided that, he used to play basketball when he was in college at BYU, and he decided he wanted to get back in shape again. And he didn't really have an hour to go to the gym because of his law practice and so forth. So he discovered this it was like 10 minutes of running, where he would just run for 10 minutes, walk for a couple minutes, run. He would run as fast as he could for 10 minutes, walk for a couple minutes. So basically he had his whole workout done in less than 40 minutes. And so then I talked to him about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, what a transformation. What did you do? And he basically explained what his wife, who was a marathon runner, what he did. And he goes, that's all I did. I didn't change my diet. I didn't do anything. I really didn't have an hour to spend working out. So I just took an extra set of clothes to work with me, and some workout clothes with me. And so at lunchtime, because it's the only time I have is during my lunch break. So instead of taking lunch, I would run out in front of, in front of the building where my office is. And I would run as fast as I could for 10 minutes, walk for a couple minutes, run as fast as I could for 10 minutes. He goes, let me tell you, I could barely run as fast as I could for the first 10 minutes the first time I did this. But I decided I needed to get back into shape until I was able to do three sets of 10 minutes where I would run as fast as I could and then walk a couple minutes in between. And I said, that's all you did? And he said, that's all I did. So I think we grossly underestimate what we can do in small amounts of time when we take focused, concerted effort, and we are committed to ourselves to take those action steps and just do it and see what the results are going to be. Give yourself 100 days. I would say, if he would have stopped after a week, he would not have been pleased with the results. He would still be sore. He still is trying to get optimized where he could run for the 10 minutes at a time. But the point in case was, I saw him 6 months later, and it was a drastic difference.
And while you were saying that, another squirrel crossed and I grabbed it. What are we doing to spoil ourselves with intention. And when I say that, I studied massage therapy back in the day, and told everybody how important massages are, and then didn't have any for years until I met my wife, who also understands the importance of massages. And so I went in the last 2 weeks. I've gotten a massage. Ooh. I had knots buried inside of knots that were on top of knots and ironically, normally when I get massages, I'm quiet, just want to lay there and relax, and got sent to a massage therapist who wanted to learn about energy. And so I'm sharing with her, okay, that knot that you're working on, what color energy is in it? And in 2 sessions, she had gotten over the whole, sounding dumb and double, questioning her answers. And, I'm like, okay, what color energy is it? What energy would help that flow out? And I could tell the second she figured it out. That pain, that knot that was this big and hurt, it hurt all the way to my hair roots. And as soon as she figured it out, she didn't change the pressure, and the pain went away. And the knot just went, and she goes, holy cow, that was cool. I'm like, for both of us, I ain't lying. And the other part that she caught on was she was working on my feet, and we were talking about, oh, see you, Bonnie. She was talking about something from her past that had a lot of dark energy in it. And my foot cramped up just like that, and the pain shot all the way up to my shoulder. I was like, ooh, what color is that energy? She's like, black. I'm like, what color takes black away? Yellow? Yeah, could you put some yellow in there? Whew, okay. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry. Because she figured out what happened. And I said, yep, that's how much energy is in there. And that's okay, because we can work on that later. But you just had a massive demonstration of what memories and energy and projection can do physically. And her ability in 2 sessions to see things she's never seen before
Multiplied.
it blew her away. She's like, oh my, wow. And we get done and she's like, I don't know if I can even charge you. I'm like, yes, you can. Because you gave me the help I needed. You just showed up and had an open mind to learn the things that you needed. And I said, out of all the stuff that I can teach you, you learned about that much. So with the tip, I said, this is for you to spoil yourself. This doesn't go towards the bills, doesn't go towards gas in the car. It doesn't go towards, this is for you to almost feel guilty about what you're going to invest it in. You're not going to spend this. You're going to invest it into spoiling yourself because you need to. And another thing that I'm very adamant with my clients is getting them to understand and be able to say the phrase, I'm worth it. And it breaks my heart every time that I work with somebody and I'm like, and why is that? And they're like, what? And I'm like, because you're worth it. And to see that, like, well, and I'm like, I want you to say it. And they'll laugh or they'll, like, oh, I'm worth it. And it's that nervous laugh, like, I don't believe it. I can't say that. I need to, Elijah, can you please pay me to learn about energy too? All right, yeah. You good at a massage? Get over here. I've got some work right up.
Surprised. You'd be surprised. I'm pretty good at massage.
Yeah, me too. Well, until I did martial arts and blew my thumbs out, but I still have a pretty good understanding of it. But again, with when you see and hear people that have so much trouble with the simple phrase, I am worth it, breaks my heart on multiple levels. And when I tell people that, you need to spoil yourself, a lot of times I'll ask them, do you have a soaking tub? Yeah. When's the last time you actually set the bathroom up for yourself, torched up a couple of candles, made yourself a drink, whatever you consider a spoilage, spoiling yourself drink. I don't care if it's Kool-Aid, if that's what makes you happy. But if you like wine, don't go for the $2 chuck, nothing against it. But every now and then you got to buy that bottle of wine where you're like, geez, for me, that's kind of bourgeois. Yes, do it. Because you're worth it. And two, because you're going to frickin' die. And you've only got so much time left on this planet. And if you can't take a couple of hours out of your entire lifetime to make it about you, even if you're married, even if you're in a relationship, even if you got a family, all the above, sometimes you have to find that one little thing that lets you know that you are worth it. Why are you working to make the money? Well, I got bills to pay. Yes, but sometimes you have to take a little bit of that and invest it back into you. And I love the way David says it. Spoil yourself to the point where you almost feel guilty and then go just a little beyond that. That way you know you did it right. Don't stop just before you start feeling guilty, because then, well, yeah, I spoiled myself. Instead of $2 chuck, I bought $4 art. Woo! But if somebody could buy you a bottle of wine, any bottle of wine, and they said, I'll buy you a bottle of wine up to $50 a bottle, what would you have them buy you if you're into wine? And you're like, oh my God, I would love to have a 72 Chardonnay. Then frickin' buy it. Well, that's $28 for, you've wasted $28 on worse stupid shit for somebody else that they went, it did. Some people have $28 under the inside their car. They just need to clean the interior out. There are people that will pay $28 to have their car washed. And they're scared to invest $28 into a bottle of wine that they would absolutely enjoy. Run a hot tub, put one of those little, I don't know, put some oil in there, whatever, dudes, 10W30, whatever makes you happy. Light a couple of candles or, start the smoker, whatever. Put on your favorite music. And if the neighbors don't like it, they can go watch a movie or something. But spoil yourself because you are worth it. And that brings us to the end of my dedicated hour, which I want to thank everybody who joined in and gave their thoughts and ideas. If this is the first time you're watching one of my recordings, my format is typically the first hour, I work on stuff that I've set up over the week. The second hour, I open it up in case anybody else has something they want to share, or else if nothing comes up, I've got stuff I could talk for about a month straight. So this is where I ask anybody, do you have anything that you want to share? And I believe we do. Lillian has some great news and something she would like to share with us. So please, Lillian.
Okay, so first of all, I have a mountain, a universe of gratitude to give to TJ, because on the last call that I was on with you guys, which was before the 27th of January, I left on the 27th of January to go to Cancun for not only my book launch, but also for a Dr. Joe event. And then I was there for a month. So, but in the earlier part of January, as you guys know, I still didn't have my book published. I still was having issues with formatting and so forth. And then I had been procrastinating because I was a little fearful of the grammar police I discovered during a mastermind session, which quite frankly shocked me, believe it or not, because I never anticipated that was an issue, but apparently it was. So once TJ uncovered that and brought that to light, then I realized what it was that I was dealing with. And then he asked the very effective question, so when are you going to call the book printer to publish that book? To which I replied, tomorrow at 3:00, which I did. And then once I talked to the book printer, then I talked to TJ and I let him know about it. So the long story short is the book is published. So we managed to publish the book. Yay, thank you very much. And then I also managed to get it published. I did the pre-launch. In my mind's eye, I really wanted to have the pre-launch done by the 2nd of February, where I could go out in public and talk about it, and then actually have the paperback and hardcover as well as the ebook done by the 22nd of February. And there were all sorts of shifting, because life happens, right? So we make our plans and then things happen. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of the backstory, because nobody really knows this other than maybe like 3 people. Not even my parents know this. My best friend actually knows it. So there's actually 4 people that know about this. So what ended up happening, my original plan was to fly into Cancun on the 27th. I was going to be there a few days before. Some of my friends knew that I was launching the book. So we were going to do all sorts of things having to do with that. And then go to the event. And then I just kind of, since I know how to use the formula to manifest certain opportunities, I figured, I'm like, okay, how am I going to actually be able to get out on the 2nd of February and actually get on a YouTube live and Facebook and do this. I'm just going to have to manifest that Dr. Joe will have a lunch break or because the hours that we are there, it's like from 4:30 in the morning to like 8 o'clock at night, and there's no schedule. So he does things based on his intuition. He'll let us go on breaks and so forth and whatnot. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have to put the intention that it'll align so that sometime in the afternoon around the 2 o'clock mark on the 2nd of February that we'll either have, whether it's lunch or a break, I don't care. I just need that window of time that we're not in the monastery actually manifest, in there doing our meditations. So that kind of unfolded beautifully. And I still didn't have the paperback, but it was the pre-launch area, time period. So fast forward to the last several weeks, we managed to, okay, so now I'm supposed to leave on the 8th. My heart's desire was I really wanted to do the whole launch, but I really hadn't planned on being there until the 22nd of February. So I had some friends who, after the event was over, a lot of it, like 300 or 400 of them were going to Tulum. They're like, oh, you should come. I'm like, oh, I've got this book thing. I really got to get back. Gosh, it would be so awesome to do the launch from here. That was really my heart's desire. But I'm like, no, I should get back. And, I need to keep the nose to the grindstone kind of a thing. So long story short, I did end up going to Tulum until the 11th because I just threw it out to the universe and I said, okay, if I'm supposed to go to Tulum instead of leaving on the 8th, then everything will happen where like it won't cost me any extra money for the airfare. Either that or something better will happen. So guess what happened? Something better happened. I changed my flight to return on the 11th and I got $67 back from my airline. I'm like, what? By my changing the airline flight, I got $67 back and now I'm supposed to leave on the 11th. I'm like, wow, that was easy. So then I talked to a couple of my friends. A couple of my friends said, oh, I already have a room here. You could come stay with me. You don't have to pay anything. Just come join us. We just want you here. So my first friend, I called him. I'm like, hey, is this offer still open or did somebody already take that spot? And they're like, it's yours. So boom. So now I'm off with my buddy, Tom, yada, yada, yada. That worked out absolutely beautiful. So now it's the 11th. You have to get a COVID test there's certain countries you don't need it to fly into, but for California, you need to have a COVID test that says that it's negative. So he lives in Florida, I live in California. So we both got our COVID tests. We show up to the airport, are the things emailed or texted to you. So I'm literally at the airline counter, he went first, he was fine, boom. They're like, oh, your test is positive. I'm like, no, it's positive, it's positively negative. I go, look again. I go, look, here it says negative. They're like, yeah, here it says negative, but it says that you're required to have a negative COVID test over here. Your results are positive. So I'm like, I go, that's bullshit. They just want my tourist dollars, but I kind of wanted to stay. And this is a perfect pretext to stay. Now I can go to my airlines. Well, I got to change this again, because of this, right? So long story short, so I, get in touch with my air because at the desk, they said, you can't do this here at the counter. You actually have to call them on the phone and talk to them about this. And then you can show them your COVID test. So I'm like, okay. So then I get $260 back. So I'm like, I keep on getting the money back. I'm like, so then I found this amazing eco hotel through booking.com. Everything worked out. It's like for not even $400 a week, including breakfast. And it's like 300 meters from Puerto Cancun, all these wonderful restaurants and so forth. I'm familiar with the area. So I'm like, this is unbelievable that for $400 per week. So I ended up staying, they told me you have to stay for at least 10 days. And then on the 11th day, you can go. So I'm like, oh my gosh, so that'll be on the 22nd. I'm like, I know it would be a good thing to fly on the 22nd because the energy is great, but that's the day that I want to actually do the book launch. So I'm like, some way, somehow, something's going to happen. And I'm just going to envision that it's going to work. And that when I go to leave at that time, that my test will come out negative and it'll all be fine. So of course I didn't have any symptoms. I never get colds or anything. So I knew that I wasn't going to have any symptoms. It was just one of those false negative error readings. So what I would have done here, I did over there. And then, of course, as luck would have it, then a friend of mine who I hadn't been able to connect with up until that point, who happens to be, she is like one of the key people for the Hotel Association in Cancun. So all the hotels in Cancun are members of this association. So then I called her because the chauffeur, I have a private chauffeur that I use when I'm there. He wasn't available because that was like a last minute thing. So then I called her. So she sent me she did better than just send me a private chauffeur. She came herself, which I couldn't believe that she could leave her busy schedule and come meet me, but she wanted to see me. And then she proceeds to tell me, oh, by the way, I noticed that you're launching your book. I happen to know the guy, the manager, who handles all the hotel's retail stores. So you can get your book in the hotel retail stores.
Woo!
I'm like, how much better can this get? This is insane. So I kept on having things like that going on. And then, so I ended up moving my plane flights to leave on the 22nd at 4:30. And so at 2:22 p.m., I got to the airport. Instead of getting there just 2-3 hours before, I got there like at 11:30 in the morning. So that way I was able to check in. Of course, they don't let you check in till 2 hours before, but I had there plenty of time where I was able to put my luggage where they were able to hold on to it and so forth. So that now, as soon as 2:22 came around, I couldn't find a place where you couldn't hear the airport, because the announcements are going on all the time and they're paging people.
Yeah.
So I thought, where can I couldn't find all the restaurants. You could still hear that noise and all that chatter. So I went into the most private bathroom that I could find. I took the handicap stall, and everything was marble. And so in that handicap stall of the bathroom in an airport in Cancun, that's where I did the book launch, and it worked out fine. So
That is
everything,
awesome.
so everything fell into place, and and people ordered the book during the pre-launch time. And then people have been ordering it through Amazon, the paperback and the ebook, and the hardcover. I had to tweak some things on the hardcover again, so that's just now become available too. So I don't think this would have. I know this would not have happened. Because I had those two viruses of fear and shame that were lurking there. I was fearful of the grammar police because my other book was, a more academic experiential book based on my experience. So it's
Yep.
more left brain cerebral. This was more personal because it was a divine download that came through. So the languaging is completely different from the previous book. And so, I didn't realize that I had that subconscious fear that the grammar police was going to, string me on a wood cross and, put me down, and and then what ended up happening, everything's a blessing in disguise. So, and that's a message of my book, but I never thought that the book itself would be a participant of that, because the setback of my having that hiccup with the publisher, well, actually I'm the publisher. So with the book printer in August, that it was just basically sitting there from August until TJ, brought to light that it's like, when are you going to call the book printer? And because since the book printer hadn't really reached out to me, the last thing was that they were so far behind from all the stuff from the pandemic, because they were shut down for a while. It was just taking longer than normal. So that worked out to be a blessing in disguise, because we completely made it so much better because of that. So that the setback was actually a setup for it to be refined and defined way better. So again, TJ, without without that nudging, that discovery, I don't think that this book would have been published yet. So thank you very much, TJ. And the other thing is, I discovered this weekend that this is going to be a book series. I've been made aware in my meditations of content that's going to go in the second book. So I will be mentioning you in the next book.
Thank you so much. That is awesome, beyond awesome. And the funny part about when you were saying telling your story, it reminded me of the the Chinese lore about the guy that lives in the village, and a horse shows up, and all the villagers are like, "Oh, how lucky!" And he's like,
We'll see.
"We'll see." And then all of a sudden, his son is on the horse and falls off and breaks his arm. Like, "Oh, how bad!" He goes, "We'll see." And then all of a sudden, the army shows up and gathers all of the young men throughout the village, but they leave his son behind because he has a broken arm. We'll see. It'll work out as it should. And yours worked out amazingly well. I'm so proud of you. That is awesome.
Yeah, it worked out amazingly better, and I'm still always astonished at there's every day there's things that keep happening that I'm like, oh my gosh, you cannot make this stuff up. This is like wild, crazy, but I'm loving every minute of it, and I've learned from this process, you know, the publishing aspect of this book and everything else that's come from it. That's why there's going to be another Intuition Manifesto. It'll be a series, and I don't know if there'll be 2 or 3 books total. I really don't know. I'm just literally following my intuitive guide. But yeah, there's been some pretty big ahas, and we don't know what we don't know until we know it. So I thought I had taken care of the whole shame thing, and that I really didn't care what people thought, because I've really had a monumental leap from 2019. The years leading up to 2019 until now. So to think that bug of shame was still there, and that I was self-conscious and worried about the grammar police, that was really kind of surprising. So, it speaks to the fact that we're all human. So we're human, and I don't even want to say that we're flawed. It's part of our human experience that we need to grow and change. And as long as we're willing to embrace the unknown, and that's the biggest lesson of all, is the more we can embrace the unknown. Because the reality is we make our plans, but those plans, everything is fluid. So anything can change in a moment. So the only thing that we know for sure is that the sun will always, the sun rises on the east and it will set on the west. No guarantee that you'll see it, because we could have overcast, clouds and things that will cover it, but it's still behind those clouds. But we can't guarantee that we'll even wake up the next morning to see it. So, you have to be open to, I think, following that intuitive lead and that guidance, because there are things that are far greater that can be done for you and with you that you can't do in your own strength. And you just have to be willing to say, okay, I have, like I said, a few people who found out about the positive COVID test. They're like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And it's like, oh, you're in a foreign country and you're by yourself. And, the majority of the group has come back and there's still people there, but are you okay? And it's like, this is like the best thing that could have ever happened. For me to be stuck in Cancun? Are you kidding me? The food is amazing. The people are happy and jolly. And I'm in this gorgeous eco village. Like, if you see the Facebook lives and stuff, some of the footage, it's like, I'm not suffering at all. I have 0 symptoms. They're getting I'm living cheaper here than I would be in the States. So I'm actually saving money. Go figure on that one.
Right.
So it was, but this is possible for if you can fog a mirror, this can be, I'm not going to say you're going to have the exact same experience, but you could be in this place where you're experiencing joy, you're experiencing ahas, but you have to be willing to accept and receive and embrace the unknown, knowing that something better is coming around that you couldn't, you plan, but you have to be fluid.
Exactly. Supremely cool. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I got to send you a paperback. I need your shipping address. I want to send you a.
Okay, I'll get you. I'll message you later.
Okay, please do.
Well, now, how the heck are we supposed to follow that up? Thanks a lot for setting the bar really high. And I mean that in the best. You are so worth it.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that a lot. It means a lot to me.
All right. Wow. Anybody else wanna share or got something to go with that, or do I have to find? Um, here's
Hi,
if.
everybody.
Hey, how you doing, Ray?
Good. I'm sorry, I kind of lost signal.
You wahua?
I said I lost signal.
Oh yes. Welcome to the world of technology. There are days I love technology, and then there's the rest of the year. But it brought all of us together here tonight, and so I'm going to choose to be very grateful for that. If we don't have any other things that people want to share or want me to go down on for stuff, I've got this one's a little tricky in a way, and it regards the way that people look at three magic questions. And those of you that have been around for a while, and those that have been on or watched a number of these recordings now, have a little idea of three magic questions. The challenge that I'm finding, just like we had discussed with Echo Talk, is making sure that people understand that these are simply understanding language in a different way and being able to use them in a specific order or a specific way. And three magic questions are nothing more than three styles of questions. But I had somebody ask me, then why do you, if you're not doing something to somebody, or then why are they called magic questions? Because sometimes when I think about them as three magic questions, I think that I'm kind of like doing some trick or something to people. And so I've been mulling it over in my head, like, okay, so what else could we call it? Where it's still cute and catchy enough to where I can use it. I call them three forms of conversational deepeners, which doesn't roll off the tongue nearly as cutely as three magic questions. But in essence, that's what they are. Question number one, I call it an open-ended conversation starter. It location, occasion. What can you pick out of the environment in the area that isn't directly personal, that isn't a yes or no question that you can ask to start a conversation? The second question would be a somewhat personal conversation deepener. Profession, passion. So many people identify with their profession and love to talk about their passion. And then the third one is an even deeper personal conversation about positive early childhood memories. And so it's basically a conversational deep dive in steps down into their personal life without walking straight up and going, hey, tell me all of your best stuff about you, starting now. And watching the walls go straight up and having them look at you like, yeah, which three-letter form of the government do you work for? I'm out of here. Ping. But as much as I absolutely love using them, and I do all the time, and I teach that you don't have to use them in order. You use them for what they are and the effect that they have. If you've been around me enough, you've heard my story of the airline pilot in the elevator many times. And in that story, I walk in and I've got 30 seconds to take a guy who is obviously having a shit day. Ray Charles could see he's having a bad day. I mean, this dude's got bad energy, and in under 45 seconds, I'm able to flip it around completely simply by using Echo Talk and 3 Magic Questions, where I jump directly towards a crossover between the second and the third. And being able to draw that energy out, his day is completely changed. So to get that does not have to take a lot of time. It doesn't have to be invasive. It's simply understanding the power that's inside that series, those styles of conversation styling, and knowing your outcome. And Elijah, again, it's just labels. A rose by any other name would still smell just as sweet, right? If the word magic doesn't suit, then by all means, use a label that works for you. The results that the structure generate will be the same regardless. And I totally agree. That's why I'm so adamantly cautious when I teach this stuff now, to let people know that you are not doing something to people. You're having a conversation. You're doing it in a form or fashion that elicits typically a different outcome than just flat out stuff that we were taught in school. And some people have been doing this kind of stuff the whole time and didn't realize it. Well, if you've had a hammer your whole life, but you've been using it to put screws in the wall, it helps to understand what the tool is and how to better use it. Elijah, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're all influencing each other all the time, whether we know it or not.
Yep.
You can't not do it. And if you do know how to not do it, can you please tell me how you don't do it when you don't? Because that's something I would love to know. Like even a kid wants to have pizza for dinner, so he's going to try and convince mommy that tonight we can have pizza. They're going to try and persuade, right? And whether they know they're doing it or not, whether it's unconscious or tactical, it doesn't matter. You can't not influence. So to reject 3 magic questions for what it is, or 3 conversational deepeners, if you like, for what they are, then really all you're doing is saying, well, I don't want to use this thing even though it's proven that it works.
Yes.
Right. And that's fine, if that's your thing. Yeah, Nancy, you want to say something?
I have a question about the 3 magic questions. Do you have to use them all, or is it just maybe picking one style, using one style at a time?
it's understanding what each one of them is in their style and what level they're at. Again, my story about the airline pilot in the elevator, I jumped straight to early positive childhood memories. But, for those that haven't heard the story before, or this is the first recording that you're listening to, we were teaching Echo Talk and Three Magic Questions pre-scamdemic down in San Diego in a hotel on the 5th floor. And because it was close to the airport, a lot of airline crews stayed there. Well, we broke for lunch and about 6 students joined me, and we get on the elevator, and there's an airline captain, co-pilot, whatever. He had all the jewelry on his outfit and the hat and everything. And Ray Charles could see this dude was having a bad day. I mean, you could feel the energy when the door opened. And so we're on the 5th floor going to the 1st. Doors are closing, and I look at him, I go, out of curiosity, how long you been flying? And he looks up and he's like, 18, 20 years, something like that. Go, wow, 18, 20 years. So were you like the 5-year-old in the backyard with the toy plane running around, putting on 1,000,000 miles, like, ee? Were you the 5-year-old in the backyard running around with the toy plane playing? Early positive childhood memory. When you access those types of memories, all of that good energy comes up. All of the good chemicals in your body trigger, and like Elijah said, instant conversational regression. And he looks up and chuckles a little bit, and you could see the clouds parting. He started smiling and everything. He's like, yeah, probably. And I said, I just wanted to let you know that I travel a lot, and so do my friends. And we appreciate someone like you who's been passionate about flying since you were that little 5-year-old in the backyard with your toy plane, getting us to where we need to go safely. Bing! 1st floor, the door is open, and the clouds are gone. His energy changed just like that. And I'm like, after you, sir. He's like, wow. Thanks. And I said, you have a good day. He goes, I will. You have a good day too. And I held the students back until he turned the corner. And I said, so what did I just do? And they're like, dude, you totally echo talked him and 3 magic questioned him. And I said, yeah. How long did it take me? And they're like, 45 seconds? I said, yeah. And what did I do for him? And they're like, you totally changed his day. I said, yes. And the lesson is, it doesn't have to be a long, drawn out process. I didn't need to know his name. I don't care. I'm not out to meet him. The only thing, my only outcome was to get him to have a better day than when I first met him. And I could have done, I could have tried to do all 3 questions in order, but I already knew his profession. I already knew why he was there. And I didn't have the time to go through all the questions and make it sound like an interview. So with this, Lillian commented, they could be renamed to 3 progressively packed questions because they progress. Because as they progress, you get to know the other person better and create a feeling of familiarity. And Elijah said, costs nothing to make people feel better. Doing it without reason is the most rewarding. But you still have to have the know your outcome. And the cool part is when you start doing it all the time, you no longer think of it as a process. That's why I tell people this needs to be done every day, every conversation, everywhere you are, as long as you are with texting, email, standing in line in the checkout line. I do this all the time, especially with strangers. It's the most fun with strangers because that's where you hone your skills. And if it doesn't work, you didn't know them, and you probably won't see them again anyway.
And it won't not work.
And they won't know it worked. That's the best part. The drawback is making sure you keep track of time and you respect other people's times, especially the people that are working. Because we have taught this to many students who went straight to the restaurant afterwards because they were starving and may or may not have gotten a couple of wait staff in trouble, because when you make people feel good about themselves, they want to talk to you. They don't have to know why they feel good. They don't have to know why their shift suddenly improved. They just know it did. And it did while they were at your table. Something magical is happening here. And then pretty soon, the floor manager is over going, you've got like 15 other tables and 3 of them are waiting for you.
You know what you can say? You can say like, oh, let me have a word with the floor manager and apologize because it was my fault.
I've done that.
Then you can make the floor manager feel good for no reason, and then everyone's cool.
Nope, I've actually had to do that for damage control. So again, if I can't stress this enough. You're not doing something to somebody. You are simply utilizing an amazing gift of conversation that makes people feel better. And it costs you nothing but a little time and some words. And if you recognize it as such, as a gift, utilizing your practice to give people gifts for free and making them feel better about their day, why wouldn't you do that?
You generate even more gratitude.
Right? One of my questioning affirmations that I think I taught this in one of the other triple T's is written on my board. Whose life will I improve today, even if I don't know about it? And my subconscious now has that question lingering. Whose life do I get to improve today? And I don't have to know about it. Leave my ego out. It's not about me. It's about, if I make it nothing more than practice, it's one of the most fun-filled, gratifying things that you can practice on a daily basis. And the rewards are amazing.
So much fun. And like you said, strangers are the best because you can't anticipate a stranger's response. You can practice with your friends because you're comfortable practicing with your friends and stuff, and that's cool. But once you gotta kind of dip your toe into talking to strangers with this kind of stuff because it's the most rewarding. You know, TJ, when I came back from my first training with David, I got a job on London Underground, which is the subway network in London, right? And I got a job in one of the busiest stations at Westminster. The Westminster station is right at the foot of Big Ben, so you have like thousands of tourists coming through every day. And I used to sit there, and I took the job literally so I could stand there at the ticket machines near where, you know, where people buy their tickets to travel around London and stuff. And I would just talk to people all day long, every day. And I did it for like 6 months. And it was great because I got really good, got over all my fears, got over all my hesitations, and you just kind of, you're just playing. You're playing and you're making people feel good. And that's all it is.
And I've referenced the fact that, you know, I'm a motorcycle rider. And so when the weather's right, I'm out in my leathers and I've got my helmet and I'm 6'4", and I throw my leathers on and they don't know which type of motorcycle rider I am. But I can still walk up to virtually anybody and within a matter of under a minute be into a great conversation with them. And it's because of using these tools, these forms. And for those that haven't caught the other recordings before, I'll share it again. One of my favorite questions that is the open-ended conversation breaker is there anything you don't like about that? And I can do it. I can walk up to the hottest, petite little lady that is used to being hit on by any male that has a heartbeat and a hormone. And normally she's got, 72 different walls and a moat and razor wire and attack dogs and everything around her. And I can simply walk up and go, excuse me, out of curiosity, what kind of shoes are those? Is there anything you don't like about them? And we're having a conversation. Even when I'm dressed as a biker, 6'4", dressed in black leather. And my favorite is try it at the gas station. And I'll tell you, ladies, be careful because you will get a conversation going, especially with a dude. He will talk your ear off. And all you got to do is look and go, out of curiosity, what year is that vehicle? Oh, it's a 2017. And you ask the simple question, is there anything you don't like about it? And the cool part is, if they're looking and they're thinking for a little bit, your simple answer is, because I've learned much more by asking people what they don't like about something than I have by asking them what they like. If I ask you what you liked about, why'd you buy this car? What do you like about it? They're like, well, because it's, look at the brand, look at the color, look at the side, oh, look at the tires. But when I ask them, is there anything you don't like about it? If they pick a few things out, I get to thank them for sharing their information with me and being honest. But here's the coolest part that I didn't think of when I first started doing this. When they look at their car and they go, nope, I love everything about it, I have just validated their purchase. They now feel even better about what they've done, and somebody noticed it and somebody asked them about it. And there have been many times where we're both done putting in fuel. We're topped off and we're, she's some married little, got a ring on that costs more than the vehicle I'm driving, but she's not scared to talk to me about her Mercedes anymore. And without using that approach, I know that won't happen because I've been a motorhead my entire life, and I've tried talking to a few people about their vehicles. And with dudes, it's No, what car is blah, blah, blah. And they'll tell you a few things and then, yep, gas tank's full, catch you later. But using Echo Talk, 3 magic questions, and is there anything you don't like about it? I've had conversations that have just rolled.
You could also, just a thought, you could also prevent one word answer. So like if someone says, is there anything you don't like about it, they could answer lots or yes or something, and then they could drop the conversation there. So you just start with the word what instead. So what are some of the things you don't like about it? And you can't answer that with one word. You need to construct a sentence. So
But I've had a few of them go lots, and I deflected into, so then what are you thinking about buying next and why? Because if there's a lot of shit they don't like about the vehicle they're driving, I promise you, they've already thought about something they want to get next as soon as they can get rid of this thing. So there's 2 different approaches there so that you guys don't feel like you're trapped either way. But it's a lot of fun. And, you know, I'm, those that know me well, I'm in Home Depot and Lowe's like a second home. I should actually there were times I was thinking about getting my mail forwarded there because it'd be easier for me to get. And a lot of times my conversational opener will I'll look at somebody and go, so out of curiosity, are you working on your home or a rental, or are you getting ready to flip your house? Boom. Because that's location styled questioning. So there's, again, understanding the mechanics behind the styles of questioning allows you to choose which level you're going to jump in on. And knowing your outcome is the best way to be able to get the words to flow out of your mouth. When we were teaching this, oftentimes when people were doing their practice sessions, when they were tripping over their words and blanking out and I always asked them, what's your outcome? What were you going to have the conversation about? And 90% of the time when they were blanking out or having issues, they didn't have an outcome in mind. As soon as they came up with something, the words flowed. And I had to remind them, the outcome can be as simple as getting them to have a better day. It doesn't have to be, what's your address, what's your astrological sign, and what do your grandparents do? Who can? No. Keep it simple at first. Again, just like the process of going to the gym, finding out what they like about their shoes, and it'll flow. And we're down to 8 minutes of Triple T number 10. One thing that I forgot that I had on my list for Facebook, so the people that have been waiting around for me to get to that point, here it is, and that's failing versus failure. Both sound like pretty close things. And I heard an amazing definition between the two, and it kind of hit me. And here it is. Fail or failing equals growth, especially when you can get the lesson from the fail or the failure right away. Failing or failure, I should say, a failing or a failure is when you quit. You've completely failed. The whole process has become a failure when you're like, all right, that didn't work, I'm done. And it reminded me of a story by Darren Hardy, who was the editor and owner of Success Magazine. And he wrote the book, The Slight Edge or The Compound Effect, one of the two. But he talks about when he was young, his dad used to take him downhill skiing. And he used to get so frustrated because he'd wipe out and all the above, crash and burn and get up and crash and burn. And one day he came up, they had been there, it was time to go home, and he came up to his dad. He goes, guess what? I didn't fall down one time today. And his dad looked at him and said, so you didn't push yourself, did you? And he was like, that wasn't the response I was expecting. And his dad goes, it's okay to fall, because falling is how you learn. You fall because you've pushed yourself. I will not judge you for falling. In fact, I'm a little more concerned that you took all the safe, easy routes to make sure you never fell once. So there's a difference between failing and failure. Any input, ideas, or?
Yeah, I was going to say you can't succeed at any level of greatness if you're playing it safe all the time, because part of success is, again, I kind of feel like I'm talking in circles here, but you have to be able to embrace the unexpected. So you need to feel the fear, do it anyway, knowing that as you quote unquote fail, you try, you fail, you adjust, you try, you fail, you adjust, until one day you try, you fail, adjust, and then you try, succeed, and you're zigzagging your way, to continue succeeding until something happens, you fail at this, you make another, you have to course correct from here till the grave. So if you're trying to play it safe, you're trying to make sure that the outcome is always the same. So by definition, you're stuck, you're not growing.
And that's why when I work with clients, one of my big things is to make sure that they are able to extract the lessons from the stuff that is holding them back. Because the subconscious is like, you know what, we paid for that lesson? Oh my God, if we get rid of that, you're gonna make that same mistake again. Cool. Keep the lesson. But get rid of all the junk that came with the lesson. You survived it. You don't need to hang on to the junk. You just need the lesson so that the next time something shows up, next time a zig shows up, you know to zag. And in the process, that's why we got 2 minutes left. I've got one more story that ties into this, is Gary Vaynerchuk. Regardless of what people say about him, he swears too much and blah, 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 whatever. You got to admit, the man came from nowhere, built his father's business up, left with nothing, built his business up. And he had a talk that hit me right between the eyes like a sledgehammer. It was just before one of my class reunions. And the title of it, and I would love everybody to listen to it to hear the real effect. I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest. The title was, So You Just Turned 50. And the Reader's Digest version, he goes, I get these people all the time. They're coming up to me, they're in their 50s, and they're like, oh, I'm a little nervous, I'm trying to wind down. I want to make sure I've got enough in my 401k so I can retire and blah blah blah. And he goes, retire? You're only 50. Yeah, but 62, 65 is right around the corner. He goes, do you understand 62, 65 as the retirement age was set in place when people were dying at 65, 70 was like, ooh, they're old. That's when that retirement age was set. People are living longer and longer and longer. 80, 90, even 100 used to be like, oh my gosh, they made it to 100. 100, you see it all the time now. Now we're seeing even 105, 110. But let's be conservative here. Let's say you're going to make it to, let's say you're going to make it to 90. That's 40 years from now. 40 years ago, you were 10. Were you thinking small? Were you thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm, no. You were you could be anything. You were 10 years old. You were going to be an astronaut, a fireman, anything. And people that are starting over at 50 are some of the most successful entrepreneurs out there because we already have all the lessons. We know what works. We know what doesn't work. We know what we're capable of. We know what we're passionate about. We know what drives us insane and that we're not going to do. So you just turned 50. Yeah, you got 40 years. What are you going to do with the second part of your life? Stop thinking small. Start living. And that brings us to 801. Start living. Don't think small. Spoil yourself. Why? Because you're worth it. Spread the word. Tell people to check out my channel if you liked it. Leave comments, subscribe, hit that little dingy bell thing. I'm learning. This is new for me. This is new. And I appreciate every one of you that shows up. And my YouTube channel is TSWB Helps, which TSWB stands for Tall Skinny White Boy. Yep, that's me, the tall skinny white boy. And again, Lillian added there are over 1 million centurions in the US alone. Yeah, so you just turned 50. What are you going to do with the second half of your life? Are you going to think small? Are you working on your exit strategy? Or is it time to cut the reins on stuff that is driving you nuts, that isn't serving you, that you don't enjoy anymore? I've started over so many times that I'm not afraid anymore. Bring it on. Starting this channel, working with you guys, I ain't gonna lie. I put it off for about a year. I was nervous. I didn't know if I'd have enough to talk about. I know. Those of you that know me are like, what? Yeah. So thanks again from the bottom of my heart, all the way through my DNA. I appreciate every single one of you. Now go out, change the world, be nice to people. I stole that from World According to Briggs, so I like it.
Thanks, TJ.
Thank you, TJ. We so appreciate you.
See you guys in 7.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Great seeing you all.
Rest of this down.